Welcome to The Explainer. So glad you're joining us today because we're looking at something that is just profoundly impactful. Today, we're stepping inside the Disaster Reduction and Human Renovation Institution over in Japan. You probably know it as the Kobe Earthquake Museum. But actually, scratch that. We aren't just doing a standard historical walkthrough. Instead, we're taking this incredibly detailed case study and using it as a literal real-world laboratory for project managers, engineers, and builders. It's a real game changer for how we think about our work. Here's how we're going to break it all down today. First, we'll look at the 1995 Kobe earthquake itself. Then, we'll explore how the museum serves as a professional field classroom. Third, we'll walk through the specific exhibit route. Fourth, we'll touch on the concept of respectful inquiry. And finally, we'll wrap up with the big takeaways, the lessons for project managers. All right, let's dive right into Section 1, the 1995 Kobe earthquake and the sheer reality of disaster. Disasters absolutely do not wait for us to be ready, right? They happen in a literal instant. January 17th, 1995 at exactly 5:46 a.m. That's when the Great Hanshin-Awaji Earthquake hit. In just the blink of an eye, the ground beneath a massive metropolitan hub just violently shifted. It fundamentally altered millions of lives and truly tested the absolute limits of human engineering. And the museum's architecture makes sure you don't forget that suddenness. If you look at this teaching sketch of the West Wing facade, the architects did something brilliant. They used that exact time, 5:46 a.m., as this massive, highly visible memorial time marker right there on the building itself. It completely anchors the reality of that cold January morning for every single visitor the second they walk up. You're literally stepping into a moment frozen in time. And of course, we really have to respectfully acknowledge the tragic toll of that morning. Over 6,400 lives were lost. You have to remember, Kobe wasn't just any town. It was a major port, an absolute economic powerhouse. When the shaking finally stopped, homes, utilities, major transport networks, the whole shebang were severely disrupted. This number makes it perfectly clear that infrastructure failure, it's never just an engineering problem. It has a profound, devastating human cost that ripples outward. Which brings us to Section 2. A professional field classroom, how we move beyond just the history. Check out this powerful quote from the source material. Disasters are not abstract design loads. They affect households, lifelines, jobs, and cities. That really hits the nail on the head, doesn't it? The absolute crucial point here is that safety, resilience, and swift recovery have to be viewed as the primary objectives for any builder or manager. They aren't just basic code compliance boxes you check off so you can move on. They are literally the lifelines that keep a city breathing during its darkest hours. And that is exactly why professionals and students are challenged to treat this space as a project management lab, not just a historical stop on a tour. As we go through the evidence preserved here, I want you to really put your professional lens on. Look at the design choices. Think about the crazy logistics of temporary housing, how you sequence utility restoration, or how public warnings get communicated. Every single artifact here is a masterclass in what happens when our systems are pushed way past their breaking point. Okay, moving on to Section 3, the exhibit route. This is a highly structured journey. So, the learning experience at the facility is broken down into 4 incredibly logical steps. Step 1, you actually re-experience the earthquake, coming face-to-face with the physical and emotional reality of the damage. Step 2 moves you into memories and reconstruction, looking at survivor stories and the monumental effort it took to rebuild. Then, Step 3 transitions into disaster protection and reduction, where you start analyzing future risks. Finally, Step 4 wraps up in the bullseye science field. It's designed perfectly, taking you right from the emotional shock of the event straight into actionable scientific mitigation strategies. You can really see that flow illustrated perfectly right here. You start up in the West Wing, and the focus is on the sheer shock and the raw evidence of the streets right after the quake. Then, you literally walk through the recovery phase before crossing over a bridge to the East Wing. Once you're there, the focus shifts entirely to the future. Science, VR simulations, preparedness. It's like the physical architecture of the building is actually forcing your brain to walk the path from trauma all the way to prevention. To really get the most out of this lab, professional visits are actively structured around specific time blocks so you stay focused on gathering data. Look at this schedule. It's super tight. The first 10 minutes, you enter, get your bearings, and set the ground rules. By minute 35, your job is to note the physical damage. You're asking what actually failed. By minute 60, you're hunting for the non-structural evidence, things like fire risks or where the utilities broke down. At minute 85, it gets harder. You're challenged to connect those personal survivor stories directly to the cold, hard logistics of recovery. And finally, by minute 115, you synthesize the whole thing to list out actions you can plan before the next disaster hits. It's an incredibly active, hands-on way to learn. That brings us to Section 4, Respectful Inquiry. It's all about asking the right questions. The source gives us some really clear guidance on how to ask good questions while avoiding behaviors that are, frankly, out of bounds. When we're talking about design and recovery, a genuinely great question sounds something like, hey, how did the 1995 earthquake influence later thinking about seismic design, inspection, and retrofitting? Or maybe asking, what was hardest to restore first, housing, utilities, or the roads? On the flip side, what you absolutely must avoid is implying that one country has all the answers. And it should go without saying, but never treat human loss as just a neat technical curiosity. Now, those same rules apply when you're asking about preparedness and communication. A highly respectful, productive question is, what should young construction professionals learn from this disaster before they ever manage a project? Contrast that with the obvious pitfalls. You never ask survivors for private, traumatic details of their experience. And again, kind of obvious, but always avoid having loud, distracting side conversations inside these memorial spaces. Respect is just absolutely paramount to the learning process here. And finally, Section 5, Lessons for Project Managers. Let's talk about application. The hard professional lessons from all of this are summarized beautifully right here. Number 1, you've got to explicitly connect the evidence you see to earthquake-resistant construction and your day-to-day project management. Number 2, you have to deeply understand that when a port or a major highway fails, it does not happen in a vacuum, right? It cripples entire regional supply chains and stalls the whole nation's recovery. Number 3, recognize that rebuilding isn't just about pouring concrete. True recovery fundamentally depends on public trust and reliable institutions. And lastly, we have to actively share these lessons so they can be transferred to global construction practices everywhere. Urban recovery is this massively complex, interwoven web of engineering, public communication, and logistics. So, I want to leave you with a direct, provocative thought drawn straight from the museum's own educational goals. After walking through the shock, seeing the evidence, studying the recovery, and learning the science, ask yourself this: what should a project manager design, inspect, and prepare before the next disaster? The clock is ticking toward the next unexpected event, guys. Our job isn't just to react to it, it's to build a world that is ready to withstand it. Thanks so much for joining me on this incredibly important explainer today, and I really hope it changes the way you look at your very next project.